Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for coming out on a cold December night to the ICA. My name is David. Can we fade out the music dramatically? Thanks for coming out. My name is David Riley. I curate performances here. And this is the final of a series called Test Pattern. It's a performance series that launched this year that invites artists to the ICA to use this auditorium as a production studio, sort of like public access TV. And in the past year, we've welcomed many artists, including DeForest Brown Jr., Madison Moore, Shanae Michaeline Holloway, Moore Mother, Jamil Olawale Kosoko, Kinlaw. And tonight, I'm very excited to be introducing the final test pattern of 2022. Test pattern number 6 with Dorian Wood. And they are going to be, that's right, presenting a piece called Mares Ocultos, which is a composition that talks about themes of erasure, anxiety, transgression. I would also add to that sexuality, intimacy, identity. And it's a piece that runs about 1 hour and 20 minutes, and it's divided into 3 movements. It brings together field recordings, video, interviews, and also a cast of local performers, which includes Virginia-based musicians David Dominique, Jon Kassalow, and Elijah Hall. And after the performance, we'll take a quick intermission, and there will also be a conversation with VCUarts professor Jonathan Molina-Garcia. As for Dorian, they're based in LA. Their subject matter is informed by her own perspective as a gender-fluid brown person, a child of Costa Rican and Nicaraguan immigrants. And Wood's intent is to infect spaces and ideologies with her artistic practice. She's performed at Red Cat, LA, The Broad, LA, Museo Nacional del Prado, Madrid. She has released multiple albums. She's been a Creative Capital Fellow and actually came here directly from McDowell residency. So please join me in welcoming Dorian Wood. And hold on, this will be the final one. Yeah, just of the year. We're coming back next year, don't worry.
This ground this ground this ground is this ground is this ground is this ground is for this ground is for this ground is for pure, pure, pure. Fucking fucking joy, joy, this ground is for fucking pure fucking joy. This ground is for fucking pure fucking joy, 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 pure fucking joy. Pure fucking joy. Nils Boris Garu Mua Uris. Yes.
You know, I've had this feeling like identity is important and then is also a prison. And so I would be able to identify if I was filling out a form, or if I was, you know, like you're asking me right now, and I have to, you know, really think of it. So yeah, maybe if you ask me very specifically, then I could even tell you specifically. But if you just said, like, how do you identify, you know, if you mean like gender or yeah, something like that, I could give you that answer.
Well, that sounds
but I don't want it to be too layered for you, you know what I mean?
Oh no, I mean we love layers, certainly in warm weather. Because like incentive to remove each one. So I need to start with what gender do you identify as?
I identify as a male.
Okay.
As a male man.
Mailman, excellent.
And I love delivering every day. No,
There we go.
So I would identify as a male.
Excellent. How do you identify sexuality-wise?
I don't, maybe I haven't like done my studies enough, but I'm attracted to females mainly, but I have, I would say, I have different ideas about like what sexuality and attraction is, of course. And, but again, if for the purposes of checking a box, I believe that heterosexual would be the box. But yeah.
Why do you believe heterosexual would be the box that you would take?
Mainly because of a purely based on kind of gut level attraction, but of a very certain kind. So I would almost say, like, what was you asked? What you said? Sexuality.
Yes.
Yeah. So I picking that apart in terms of like what I would be describing this as almost like a lust drive, like the ability to be titillated or excited or kind of physically lit up by another. It doesn't even have to be like, it could be a fantasy, but it could be by another body. The female form does that for me, right? Like even some of my earliest memories where I was like attracted or thought I was attracted, they just happened to look like females, And so that's why I would say, if that's the definition of heterosexual, I guess that's why I would say that. But I also don't, I also have my own, maybe my own just conception of attraction. And it would be false to say that I'm only attracted to women.
Why do you feel it would be false to say that?
Because I think that's so narrow, to only like to have the lust drive be the only definition of my sexuality or even my attraction. It excludes so much. Whereas I would like to see sexuality include more, even, I would like to see it include more aspects of human and even non-human. That sounds a little bit maybe extreme, but I don't mean, like, again, that's one of the issues I find with defining sexuality is I find that it's already so narrow that generally speaking, unless I'm just going to have a very open conversation with someone I've never met or with someone I know really well, I would say I want it to have a more open and more, boundaryless definition. I remember one of my earliest teachers, a professor at VCU, actually, she said in the 60s, she had lived, maybe as a blossoming teenager in the late 60s. She said, we had a sexual revolution, but we never had intimacy revolution. And it stuck with me, obviously to this day. I think about that a lot in terms of this question of ability to feel close with and intimate with, and how hemmed in I feel by the fact that the intimacy has to mean, commonly in at least the society I interact with, intimacy means there has to be something sexual about it. Sexual in the terms of like carnal, or even just purely physical.
Right.
I just think that there's so much more nuance to that. So while I can on the one hand say, okay, heterosexual on this one level, this one kind of category, isolated thing, I don't feel comfortable even saying that for the nature of attraction or intimacy or many other things that I think the greater society would define as sexual. Does that make yeah?
Yeah, I totally hear you. Yeah, would you say that you feel your identity as heterosexual limits you from expanding into these areas?
It doesn't feel like mine. I think what frustrates me is that it feels like somebody else's definition. So it's, for example, it's not that I don't believe that there are masculine qualities and feminine qualities in the world. It's that I don't like that only certain qualities are emphasized heavily. This is what masculine is, and as if that definition by whomever came up with it is going to be the tablet.
Right.
And that's what's so frustrating is I don't mind accepting a masculine role, but I want to have some cultural and personal say in it. Like it has to, for it to be true,
Right. Do you feel that therefore ticking off the box of heterosexuality means that you're not free to waver between masculine and feminine?
Yeah, or even understand what masculine even is. Right. Yeah, exactly. Like heterosexual, taking off that box again, and just the kind of general view of society means you're going to be masculine in this way, Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you primarily surround yourself with people who identify as heterosexual?
It depends on work. At work, not so much. It's very mixed, I believe. As close as you get to people you work with, you get very close to them on one level, and then in some ways you keep your distance, especially since I'm, technical boss. But we work together. I'm in the kitchen as well, so it's a little different. In terms of, I would say most of my close male friends are. I would say my female friends probably a little more mixed for some reason. But I don't. Yeah, I would ask them. I bet you they would tick the box. But maybe I don't ask them because I don't want to have to, have them fit something. They can come to me one day and say, "Hey, I'm into this," and I'd be like, "Oh, okay."
Do you feel that in the way that you all vaguely understand what box you would take, essentially, do you feel that a conversation about this would be something that would be welcome in a casual way?
Yes, I do. Because I think I feel comfortable enough explaining to them my feelings of what intimacy is without it having to be purely carnally sexual. I wish I almost had better words for this, but I remember when I was really young, I read D.H. Lawrence's Women in Love. And I can't remember actually a lot of it, but one of the things that stuck with me was how it's so much about men in love with each other. Like the powerful parts of that book, and at least in my memory, was about how the men really connected. And so again, I almost felt like that's something pretty in greater American society still is almost taboo, is for, we have term like the movie, I don't know, I haven't seen Bros, but bromance or like this kind of thing, but it's not it's like it has to be one thing or another. It's not allowed to exist in some kind of it have its own life, basically. So there's part of identifying in general that I feel does kind of limit the life force, because it has this, not that, you don't need to label or designate things sometimes just to designate something, like I'm handing you a spoon. But I do wonder how much it does for us, like whether it's heterosexual or otherwise, ticking the boxes. Yeah. Right.
I understand. When you speak of society, though, are you speaking of a heteronormative society, I'm assuming?
That's what I would say that's, like even, Richmond, Virginia, where I am, or, and I grew up traveling to Turkey. They're very different concepts of what heteronormative is. You're allowed to hold a man's hand or joke with him in public or tickle him or like, put your arm around him there. And yet they can be extremely homophobic. It's not a sign that they're like more evolved even. It's just they have a different standard for male, like public male to male interaction.
Right.
So I grew up kind of seeing that. And then I also grew up in America where it's very, I haven't read any dissertations on this, but it seems that violence is like the only way that men can get close to each other in like popular culture. Either through, sword fighting in the movies or in football or something like that, like where there's some kind of, some sort of violence. But so I feel the society here I'm referring to would be more like heteronormative, but I would just say that it's kind of that's the defining kind of feedback that I get just in my kind of daily interactions with people. Not that you get to like have deeper conversations about your own, these are pretty deep parts of people, that you get to explore those things with, everybody around you in society. Maybe if you did, you would find out, oh, actually, maybe this is not what I thought, but generally people keep it kind of closed.
How would you perceive that? Like, do you feel that there are, when you say generally, do you feel that there are certain people that are more open about it? And if so, how would you define that?
In conversation, I think it would be more akin to almost being able to have a good conversation with someone, where there's a flow between speakers, and so you can just kind of sense that there's an openness to talk about this or that, and so and that feeling of not going to be judged, right? Like I think that does a lot in any setting. And so I don't feel like I don't say we, I don't feel like I'm often in a situation where I'm just, out and about, like going on my grocery errands or something, where I feel that kind of level of comfort, just, talking with someone in line or something, it'll be pretty surface level. But if I was having this conversation, say with a coworker or with somebody who came over for dinner or something like that, I think there would, for me, that I would just sense an openness. I think it would just feel a little more free in the conversation.
Do you feel that if we did not live in such a heavily accentuated heteronormative of society, you would feel more comfortable having these conversations more often?
I think that's a very good question, because I don't know if it's just societal. You know, I wonder if the I think that there has to be a kind of an impetus or a catalyst behind having a conversation about sexuality. So usually it'll be in reference to something that's in the media, right? Something that everyone's read or heard, some kind of shared cultural event. And then based on that, there will be more of a conversation because there's something sparking it. I think generally it's not as it's not something that I would say is, I would actually say it does come up at work, like more often, I think, because it is a bit in the human mind right now, because more boundaries are being pushed publicly, and people are constantly, myself included, kind of reassessing, well, what does this mean? What is it worth to label? And especially, I don't know, we don't have to talk about this now, or we can, but like one of the conversations I think that it comes up most actually is, it goes back to this sense of identity rather than kind of the outward display of sexuality. It's like a much more inward thing. And that's the conversations I feel like that happen maybe more easily, or they're just easier for people to tap into, or even just have an opinion on very quickly, because they also don't have to, I guess it's easier to have maybe an opinion on like, oh, how do you identify, like that, rather than kind of breaking down layers of what is heteronormative versus like, why is this considered normal,
Right. Now, I find that actually very fascinating, and in hearing how you speak of the idea of a conversation, for example, and types of conversations that we choose or choose not to have with certain people, be it, for a lacking level of comfort or a pronounced level of comfort, in which we decide to engage in conversations of such a deep personal nature. I wonder then if we can also speak of conversations that aren't necessarily verbal, but rather circumstantial, if that makes any sense. I love something that you mentioned earlier, the idea of intimacy not always being something that is carnal or sexual, but rather focusing on what intimacy can also be. And in taking the concept of intimacy, when we take the concept of conversation, we can see it as us in the context of other people, in our physical vicinity or even our virtual vicinity. Perhaps not even interacting directly with us, but when we project a certain mindfulness into who we are and what the situation is and why we're there, and perhaps interactions, a glance that we give at someone, or like if someone, based on the way they look or dress or speak, ignite a reaction within us, a form of interaction that I believe is very much centered on who we deeply identify as and the many levels and layers of what that would entail, filtered through an expectation of who we present as.
So that hits the nail on the head, and this is exactly what I think almost bothers me about identity is, and why I say it's a little bit of it reminds me a little bit of a prison. And sometimes I feel like when people are discussing identity these days, especially in regards to sexuality, it feels like we're talking about like different wings of the prison. Like, well, this one is really bad. Nobody gets fed. Everyone's starving. It's a horrible place to be.
Right.
And then there's this other wing of the prison where there's king-size beds and masseuses everywhere, and there's grapes, but like it actually is still a prison.
Right.
And it could switch. It could just be that there is a part of me that that believes that identity, in terms of, especially when we have to hold it so hard, and like we have to hold it so tough, you know?
Do you feel like you need to hold yours so tough?
No, because I believe that it is it's like my sacred duty to be on the earth in a different way. You know, like I don't believe that I came here only to be a male. You know, that would just, I think that there's a natural push in human beings, I have noticed, a natural push to want to transcend ourselves, you know. And I do believe that we have to be able to understand ourselves first in order to do that. But my worry with a lot of friends and family, and when they're talking about identity, they're still, it's like reactive to heteronormative stuff. And so it still wants to establish a pinpoint. It wants to establish something kind of static, like I know myself, and then this is where it is.
Right.
Whereas which is a little bit scarier, but I believe that it's probably very alive and dynamic. And the moment you point to it, it could move over here and over there. And so my sense is, even though I present as, I think that's what, you know, I would be able to say, right? I present as a heterosexual male. It feels so deadening to say that and believe it in this kind of ultimate truth way, or in this, like, that's not who I truly am. That's what people see. That's the suit that I'm wearing.
You believe that people see you as a heterosexual man?
Yeah, I do. In general, I mean, I don't. Well, not all. I got called names like randomly from cars when I was younger, and it would you know, kind of surprise me. Yeah, I've been called names like when I was really, really young. I think, you know, my parents were immigrants from Turkey, and so maybe there was something about, you know, people that, that's what I mean, like they see something like it's different and they don't even know why, or, you know, I mean, this is little kids talking to each other. So I have vague memories of that, but generally speaking, and that's actually a good question. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe not so much.
Well, I mean, it's you know, really going back to how we initiated our conversation, where this was after much, you know, debating, or like in the span of a few seconds, like, you know, you hesitantly ticked off the heterosexual.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And my impression is that in language that you've used, as far as like prison, as far as
it's kind of extreme, huh?
well, I mean, is it though? I don't believe it is actually extreme. When we talk about prison, we talk about confinement. We at times can also talk about how we have normalized, for a variety of reasons, be it for survival, be it for a lack of knowing beyond our own prison walls or metaphorical prison walls, the idea of liberation and what that would feel like, or what that would mean as far as being uprooted from the surroundings we know so well, and the uncertainty of that. And I believe it's in every single one of us to dread, to a certain extent, the uncertain.
Yeah.
I believe that taps into everyone's personal relationship with death. And
yeah, exactly. The body we're going to leave.
Right. So then we tend to integrate ourselves into, clan-like behavior, into spaces that bring us comfort, living spaces, workspaces, spaces we hold for others, spaces that we ask others to hold for us. There's a mindfulness in all of that at times speaks to having to tick a box in order to not rattle the walls of this prison too much, out of a fear of who knows what.
Right. No, that's a very good point. Yeah.
So then I feel that there are very much, as you elaborated on earlier with the Bacchus mentality of grapes and servants, like, in a prison, it's still a prison. And prisons of privilege, I feel, are the ones that are more difficult to acknowledge and to challenge, because there is a privilege into being in these particular prisons.
Oh yeah.
and I'm sure, like, what that's like based on what you've told me, and frustration that you've expressed as far as feeling the need to conform to a government mandated identity, essentially.
Right.
Not feeling that is really what that is really even enough, or even touching the surface of who you truly are.
Right. Yeah.
So then, we can ask ourselves, well, what is identity, and who came up with it, and what for? The idea.
It's fucked up. No, I mean, the thing is, I do think that, what is identity? That what we were saying, what I was saying earlier, that designation that's helpful. I have a name, a contact name in my telephone. It says Dorian Wood, so I know who I'm calling. Just literally the logistics of it, and then beyond that, it's like you said. There's been this buildup. I believe. I don't know who came up with it, but I believe that as the world, as kind of the shadow of the world has become lit, and there's no corner left unseen now. Everybody can see each other in the full light now, and can communicate with each other across vast distances and all of that. I feel that there is a desire for a new culture where identity had a place even 100 years ago, maybe even stronger a little further back, depending on where you were in the world. But I do sense that identity has now become, it's kind of like a security threat. I feel like people feel just like you said, that connection to their own physical death. I think this is why people are so willing to be so emotionally involved and fighting against people who challenge their identity, is because they feel a physical sense of attack.
Sexuality for you. What do you wish for yourself your sexuality could be?
Wow, there's so much here, because it does connect to the same tension I feel between individual and communal, which I can explain a little bit more in a second, but I feel also between like what would be my sexuality versus like, let's say the heteronormative, or like the world's, as if the world can have its own sexuality. But
heteronormativity says it can.
Who says? Who says that?
Heteronormativity says it can.
Bummer. I mean, it doesn't even make sense, right? But I would say that my ideal would be a world in which the taking care of the relationship, like the quality of a relationship and how you take care of it, is primal. That's the essence of it. So everything else is secondary to it. The sexuality, the physical, how things happen physically, how they even happen if there's multiple partners involved, like all of that, if it could be subservient and obey the rule of, is the relationship being taken care of? Are you being a good, whatever that role is, then that's kind of this, I would say, uncomfortable tension that I've always felt between this desire for individual freedom to be, completely myself, but then also this deep, and this might be my heritage or my upbringing or just the way my consciousness has moved in life. But I think we also have a need. We're not just individuals, we're not just atoms floating randomly either. We have a need to feel part of an organ or an organism.
Do you mean yourself?
I mean, I believe this is true for like 7.8 billion or whatever of us.
Well, because my question specifically was your sexuality. What would you wish for you?
For me, I think as long as I would put it under that main first thing, is if I would wish that if the emphasis is on the relationships in my life being taken care of, then that line between intimacy and sexuality is more open. Does that? I don't know if that answers. I mean, basically, I don't have like a one-word answer, so to speak, of what sex.
Right. And there doesn't have to be.
Okay, yeah, but it would be. I would say the only ways in which it doesn't feel like it's that now is almost more. Something you said really struck me. We tend to try to find those spaces that will hold us in a certain way. Like you said, like maybe you feel just so threatened having to assimilate all the time. I'm speaking to myself now. I feel threatened enough that I have to assimilate all the time that I've even created, a workplace where I feel very comfortable being myself. And I would want everyone to be comfortable feeling like they are themselves. So I would say that because I've almost created these little bubbles for myself, my wishes for what my personal sexuality is are relatively fulfilled. You know, I think I probably, it is hard, like, you know, within my relationship, there's been issues of, like, you know, jealousy or both ways. You know, I'm married, you know, with a ring and everything, and so that you know, that dynamic is, I think, also connects back to what I was saying about, I almost do wish that there was a way of being sexual without it having to be physical. I guess it is almost like more of an expression of self, but it would be, for me, very limited to, like, if I was going to get on a stage or, you know, perform a song or perform. I think that's where I would probably find the most freedom. I think that's where our society gives a lot more freedom, because it's a weird place to inhabit. I guess you would maybe know more about this, because it's just different. Like, if I'm at the Lowe's, you know, getting my staple gun or whatever, I might not, express myself in that, like, in that same way, in the same way that, like, I would want people to feel like, oh, you can be intimate with me, it's fine. It doesn't mean, like, it doesn't mean I'm hitting on you or you're hitting on me. Like, we can have a moment that is totally human. and yeah, so I would say that my ideas of sexuality kind of butt up against that. But in terms of my own personal, like, kind of life, I mean, maybe I wish I had more time to explore, you know, other aspects of sexuality. Sometimes you just feel like you're just making $1 and you're getting by. And
right. You mentioned earlier, and by the way, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I'm very, very, very appreciative. You mentioned earlier something cultural that Turkish men do as far as showing very basic casual affection to each other, a lot of fun. And do you feel this is something that you wish were more normalized here as far
Yes. Absolutely.
Do you feel that this is a yearning you have as far as physical interaction with men?
Absolutely. I think the idea that because you're a man, you wouldn't want to touch other men.
Because you're a heterosexual man.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, exactly. Again, I just don't want the box, right? But yeah, exactly. Because you're a heterosexual man. Well, no, even if I was a gay man, then if I'm touching another man, it still has to be sexual. It's like, I think so. I think if in the heteronormative mind, there's two gay men walking down the street, they're like, oh, well, they must be together. They're touching. In America, at least, you know? I don't know if you would be able to tell as easily in Istanbul or something. I mean, maybe they would try to use other markers, you know, other identifying features. But I think that an American could see a video of two Turkish men walking down the street, you know, arm in arm, and they wouldn't understand that doesn't mean the same thing there that it does here. And so, yeah, I think that's extremely limiting. Like, I would definitely, but again, like I said there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're more, it's just a different cultural thing. It doesn't mean that they're actually more open or accepting or gender fluid, unfortunately.
Do you feel like when you said earlier that two gay men touching would actually be sexual?
Well, I mean, I'm saying that I think that whether I was heterosexual or homosexual would have no bearing on if I was walking down the street touching another man. I think it would be interpreted as a sexual by the greater society. I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but I believe that it would be interpreted as a sexual, that there would be something sexual about it, because I think everything is so sexualized here. And I think it would be the same if I'm with a woman. It would be exactly the same. And I believe that might just run the gamut, and that might get into another area of culture that I think is really, that might be saying something. I don't know what it's saying, but we have such an I have, 2 daughters that we'll see, how they grow. But, and it's crazy seeing the socialization, like how things start and move, and you want so badly for them to be true individuals, to just have the space to be, it starts so early. They want to satisfy their friends and their teacher, and little looks and things. Yeah, it starts so early. They're 3.5 years old, and it is it's a major concern, even as a parent, as a next generation, the over sexualization, especially of women. It's frightening. It's terrifying to me, and so anyway, I believe that that's more at the root, perhaps, is that thing that we said at the very beginning. That we were talking about. That my teacher had said, this idea that we still, how many years has it been? 60 some years. There isn't a revolution in intimacy yet, where people can be intimate with each other, and they can understand that there's an understanding that it doesn't have to be defined as a certain sexual dynamic. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding, or maybe I don't know even what that category fits in. What category? Yeah.
I'm really, really grateful to hear your perspective, and I'm also very interested in doing away with categories. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about agenda here, that is mine. Yeah. My agenda is to do away with categories. I went from being non-binary to gender fluid simply because I didn't want to identify as something as not being something, but rather, for now, gender fluid in that I don't really have another term available to me to even remotely define who I am. And I have grown to embrace that, the human fear of the uncertain. I actually embrace that every day, and draw strength from that. When you talk about your teacher, and when you, through her words, channel your own personal frustration with the lack of revolution with intimacy, I detect this is based on a lot of your own personal interactions with your community, and perhaps based on my own experiences, what sounds like a very heteronormative influence community.
Response, yeah.
So I can tell you that the community I'm a part of, that revolution has been happening for a very long time. And I can tell you also that I understand the fear and concern of dwelling into that territory of intimacy revolution, because in my experience of as a kid first wanting so terribly to identify as straight, then identifying as gay, then identifying as non-binary, then identifying as gender fluid. I know firsthand the fear of stepping into something else, and also into stepping into something else, what you are leaving behind. And sometimes it seems that you give up a great deal in wanting to join the intimacy revolution. That concerns about whether or not someone thinks that you walking down the street with a man or a woman in what you feel is an intimately comfortable way can be perceived as something that is sexual. That fear is understandable because heteronormativity is dangerous. Heteronormativity is a prison of privilege. This is the prison of privilege, where whether you choose to tick off the box or not, there is a part of you that at the end of the day will default to this place of comfort where you know for a fact you will not be judged outwardly for being not even, intimate, just really being you in a way that doesn't have to over-explain to anyone. Just you being you, stepping out of your house, interacting with people the way you are comfortable with. Without giving much regard to a wider, whiter perception. And that may seem dangerous, but there is sadly no safety in liberation either. And yet it is the greatest indescribable joy that you will ever experience.
Dorian. Thank you, Dorian. Thank you, Elijah, Jon, and David Dominique. We're going to take a short intermission, about 10 minutes, and rejoin here about 9:15 for a conversation with Dorian and J. Molina-Garcia. So there's still food out there. There's a bar. Please come back and join us for a conversation and Q&A. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.